Wildcat is the new movie directed by Ethan Hawke, starring his daughter, Maya Hawke, about the life of the famous Catholic writer Flannery O'Connor. And as a biopic, I thought that this was a very solid movie. As a Catholic, I think this is going to have some people divided. All that and more coming up next on Catholic Link. Hi, I'm Mateo Rivera, the Cinematic Catholic, and I was sent a screener of Wildcat to review for you guys, and let me just say, as somebody that went into this movie knowing absolutely nothing about Flannery O'Connor, I came out of this film with so many questions and a strong desire to do more research on her life and her writing. And so if that was the goal of the film, then they absolutely succeeded. But if you're like me and you knew absolutely nothing about Flannery O'Connor, then let me catch you up to speed. Flannery O'Connor was an American novelist and short story writer who was very prominent in the 50s and 60s, and she was indeed a Catholic, which did inspire her work and life greatly. This movie follows her in her younger years when she comes back home to live with her mother while struggling to publish her first novel. And before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me just say that this movie is exactly why I give both a cinephile score and a Catholic score in my videos. Let's start with the filmmaking aspect of this movie. The storytelling structure of this film interweaves events of her life, spliced with on-screen depictions of the stories that Flannery O'Connor is currently writing or will go on to write. This made for a jarring but very captivating viewing experience. This movie felt like a cross between Little Women and Swiss Army Man, in exactly the way that you think that means. And also, I do want to say that Maya Hawke's performance as Flannery O'Connor is nothing short of incredible. She absolutely disappears into this role, into this character. I, like most people, probably most know Maya for her work as Robin in Stranger Things, but when I was watching this movie, the only person that I saw on screen was Flannery O'Connor. She is an absolutely phenomenal actress, and I cannot wait to see what else she decides to do in her career. We see Flannery struggling to get published due to the fact that she is a woman, and we see her struggling to live at home with her mother, who she does not see eye to eye with, particularly in the areas of race and what her mother expects of Flannery, both as a daughter and as a writer. And as a filmmaker and storyteller myself, this movie resonated with me on a whole nother level. There are several moments in this movie where her mother says things like, "Why can't you just write a nice story? Why can't you write a story about happy things?" And the teenager in me was screaming, okay? Also, one of the things that Flannery battles in this movie is that internal conflict of, can I write a story that is not explicitly religious and still serve God? Does everything I do explicitly have to be in reference to Christ and the church in order for me to please God with the work that I do? And again, this is something that I related to very, very well, and I think that most creative types will as well. I'm actually currently working on a novel right now, and one of the things that I've struggled with for years is finding that balance between allowing Christ to reveal himself to others in my work while also telling a good and compelling story that people will want to read and be invested in regardless if they're religious or not. Flannery's life becomes even more complicated when she is diagnosed with lupus, which is the same disease that killed her father. And in that, this film really touches on suffering, how we are to respond with suffering, and how we are to love God in the midst of our suffering. And because of that, I think that there is a certain demographic of Catholics that are going to watch this movie, and it is just going to spark hour-long conversations and discussions. I will typically write notes while I'm watching these movies to review for you guys, and if there's like a quote from the movie that I really like, I will jot that down as well. And in this movie, I wrote down like 20. This film did an excellent job of showing us inside Flannery O'Connor's mind and how she felt about religion and her faith and her relationship with God. And I did also watch the interview that Ethan and Maya Hawke did with Bishop Barron about the inspiration for why they wanted to do this movie and how much Flannery O'Connor means to them, and that was very insightful for kind of getting inside the mind of this movie as well. And I could really see what they meant watching this film and seeing how Flannery spoke and the discourse that she had with the other people in her life. One of my favorite quotes from this film is when she says, "What people don't understand about religion is how much it costs. Some people think it's a big electric blanket when really it's the cross." There's another really good scene where she's in bed sick and a priest comes to visit her and she says, "If we could accurately map heaven, some of our up-and-coming scientists would begin drawing blueprints for its improvement and guys would be selling copies for 10 cents a piece." And look, I wish I was one of those heady, big-brain Catholics that spent their evenings sitting around, sipping on scotch, discussing Thomas Aquinas and the 4 principles of double effect or whatever, but I'm just not that guy. God made me and was like, you like Spider-Man and dinosaurs. And I go evangelize with that. But watching this movie made me seriously stop and ponder many aspects of my own life and my relationship with God. And this movie has stayed with me. It has led to me having many conversations with people that haven't seen the movie but know and love the work of Flannery O'Connor, or people like me who didn't know anything about Flannery O'Connor, but the thoughts and ideas presented in this movie were things that I thought would resonate with them as well, so I wanted to get their take on it. Now, the reason I think that this movie will be divisive amongst Catholics is because it's a pretty bleak movie. And that is not a bad thing. I can think of a handful of people that'll really appreciate that. Because, you know, Catholics, glutton for punishments, right? But basically, I walked away from this movie with the feeling of, yeah, sometimes life sucks. And you just gotta sit in the stink. And you know what? I mean, that's right. Like, sometimes love comes in the form of tough love. Life's hard, get a helmet. If life were fair, we'd all go to hell. All of that stuff, right? We all had moms, you know what I mean? But I think if someone like my mom would have watched this kind of under the lens of like, this is a Catholic film, by the time it's done, I think that she would come out of it and be like, where was the Catholic? I saw no Catholic. But like I said, I think that there's a certain demographic of Catholics, maybe college-age students or those scotch sipping types, right? I think that for them, this is like a whole new form of religious movie that they would love to dissect and discuss. The other thing that I think may put people off to this movie a bit is there's a scene in this film that, let's just say, once Twitter gets a hold of it, it's all over. This movie deals a lot with racism and Flannery's disgust and the racist views and opinions of certain people in her family. And without getting too much into it, girl, same. And so there's a scene that I think may be based on one of her short stories that kind of felt more like a fever dream, in which they're in a hospital waiting room and this woman is just kind of going off about black people and how they should act and how they could be more respectable and just kind of all this stuff, right? Again, this movie takes place in the 50s, so keep that in mind. And then out of nowhere, Jesus comes in the room and he tells her that the only way for her to enter into the kingdom of heaven is he can turn her into white trash or turn her into a black person. Only he doesn't say black person. He says another word that has an R in it. And he hit that R hard too, man. I do not know how that actor must have felt on that day. And I gotta say, while I was watching the scene, I know what the movie meant, right? We are all created in the image of God. We all have Christ within us. And so when you are rude or disrespectful to somebody, you are being disrespectful to Christ. That's a very good message. I really like that intention. But I feel like this almost becomes like a Last Temptation of Christ situation where it's like, I don't know if executing it in this particular way is going to convey the message and the idea that you want to get across in the way that you want it to come across. Or maybe hearing Jesus drop a hard R is going to be super jarring and distract from the idea that you're trying to convey. Maybe, but I don't know. I live in Texas, so maybe I've just heard that word one too many times from someone who looks like a King of the Hill character. But I'm very curious to watch this movie again with some of my more esteemed Catholic colleagues and get their take on that scene. Now, with all that being said, I think that this movie does a very excellent job at conveying the struggles of an artist and making something out of nothing. There's another quote from this movie that I love where Flannery O'Connor says, "Writing is like giving birth to a piano sideways." I also think that this movie is very thought-provoking in its views on religion and the role that our relationship with God plays in everything that we do. However, I do not think that this movie is for everybody. I do not even think that this movie is for every fan of Flannery O'Connor, especially watching it under the lens of a Catholic perspective. And so for my cinephile score, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. Very strong direction by Ethan Hawke. And Maya Hawke's performance absolutely made this movie. A lot of celebrity cameos as well. There's a point where Liam Neeson comes in this movie and I was like, oh! And for my Catholic score, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10. But with the caveat that some people will really, really like this movie and some people will not resonate with it at all. But I would love to hear from you guys if you have seen Wildcat. What did you think of it? I absolutely love having conversations with you guys in the comments, so please let me know. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed my review. Once again, my name is Mateo Rivera, and until next time, hasta la vista.